every few years, the Pew Research Center does a pretty extensive survey of what Americans believe concerning religious belief. And most recently, they completed a survey and released the findings of their survey. And what they discovered was that for the first time since they've been doing this survey, less than a majority of Americans celebrate Christmas primarily as a religious holy day. 46%. 54% celebrate Christmas primarily as a cultural holiday. Thought that was interesting. They also asked a number of other questions about what people believe surrounding the biblical story of Christmas, and they looked at all kinds of things. One of the things that they looked at was, do people actually believe parts of the Christmas story? Say, for example, that the shepherds came to visit Jesus in Bethlehem, or that there were angels. They asked that question. And it's interesting, what they found was that 64% of Americans believe the biblical story that there were angels present there in Bethlehem. I thought that was interesting. When they sort of broke it down by age group, though, when they looked at millennials, those 18 to 35 or 36 in that neighborhood, what they found was that less than 50% actually believe that there are angels, believe in angels. It's interesting, you stop and think about, for us in the Christian church, who affirm the importance and the value of the Christmas story as conveyed in the Bible. What do we do with that? You know, we could look at that and we could become defensive. We could turn our noses up at people who maybe not share beliefs. But you know, it seems to me that I think a good first step for all of us is for all of us to ask ourselves, do I believe in angels? I mean, do I believe in angels? To stop and think about that personally. And what does that mean? I mean, if you look at the biblical story is chock full of angels. An angel speaks to Zechariah and announces that he and Elizabeth will have a child who is to become John the Baptist. An angel speaks to Mary. An angel speaks to Joseph. An angel is present in Bethlehem at the birth of Jesus. An angel comes to Mary and Joseph and warns them to flee to Egypt, to get away from Herod and his evil plans. I mean, the biblical story is chock full of these angels. And what do we do with that? I mean, maybe it's good for us to stop and ask ourselves, what is an angel? I mean, for most of us, if you stop and think about angels, we think of these winged creatures who fly around and play harps and things like that. That may be maybe an artistic view of angels, maybe a cultural view of angels, but that's not what angels are in the Bible. If you look at the Bible, the word angel simply means messenger, an envoy. When God chooses to speak to someone and uses a messenger, if you will. That's simply it. It's as simple as that. It is a messenger. God choosing to convey a message to someone through someone else. That's what an angel is. I mean, if you go back to the Old Testament, I mean, there are angels there as well. Abraham, it's an angel who comes to him and says, don't kill your son Isaac. 3 angels come to Abraham and Sarah to stay with them. And they are humans. And they are guests in Abraham and Sarah's home. And the Bible tells us that they were angels, that they had been visited by angels. And they were not aware of this. An angel appears to Moses in the burning bush. So the Bible, again, is chock full of this idea of angels. You know, when I ask myself the question, do I believe in angels? I have to admit that I even wonder sometimes about this angel thing. I've heard all sorts of stories about angels. You know, you wonder, is this stuff really true? Or is this just sort of a figment of our imagination or fairy tale? I mean, we may think, we know too much. We humans have too much knowledge, and the idea of angels may seem antiquated. Most people think that we know too much to believe in silly things like angels. And I too wonder at times. But then I always find myself going back to a story that I heard and read as a child. It's a story of Dr. Seuss. It's entitled On Beyond Zebra. Let me share just a portion of it with you. Said Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odell, my very young friend who was learning to spell. The A is for ape, the B is for bear, the C is for camel, the H is for hare, the M is for mouse, and the R is for rat. I know all 26 letters like that. Through to Z is for zebra. I know them all well, said Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odell. Now I know everything anyone knows from beginning to end, from the start to the close, because Z is as far as the alphabet goes. Then he almost fell flat on his face on the floor when I picked up the chalk and I drew one letter more. A letter he had never dreamed of before. I said, you can stop if you want with Z, and most people stop with Z, but not me. In the places I go, there are things that I see that I never could spell if I stopped with a Z. I'm telling you this because you're one of my friends. My alphabet starts where your alphabet ends. So on Beyond Z, it's high time you were shown that you really don't know all there is to be known. I remember reading about a painter who wrote to Oscar Wilde and said, as science becomes more and more materialistic, I'll just have to paint more angels. He said, painting angels is my protest in favor of the mystery of life. There are times when I think to myself, I know too much to actually believe in angels. But then I stop and I think, is it possible? Is it possible? Maybe I don't know everything. And if we posit that there is a God, that this God came in human flesh, and this God chooses to communicate at times through messengers, envoys, if you will, that we call angels. What if that's possible? As we engage people who may not believe the Christian faith, I think, again, we can become defensive, we can dismiss them, we can turn up our noses at them, but it seems to me that there's an opportunity for us to engage with people who say, I couldn't believe in angels, I know too much. That maybe this is an opportunity for us to engage with people at the intersection between what we know and what we don't know. That it's possible. Are there angels? Maybe some people are right and there aren't. But just maybe there are. To engage people in the conversation around the question, is it possible? I've heard testimonies about angels, and some of them I sort of attribute to crackpots, and I've really been skeptical of some of them. But in my life, I've also heard some people whom I really love and admire who've shared their own experiences. My grandmother, when I was a young teenager, I remember she told me an experience that she had. She was awakened at 4 a.m. by a voice, and she said it was an angel. And she said that the angel told her that her little brother Jimmy was safe, that he was okay. And she was troubled by it. She didn't know exactly what to make of it. She was 70 or 70s at the time. Her little brother Jimmy was probably in his late 60s. And she wasn't sure what to make of it, and she began to pray about that. And at 6:30 that morning, she received a call from her sister-in-law telling her that her little brother Jimmy had died that morning. An angel? What do you think? Several years ago, I was visiting with a family. The family had been visiting with our church, and they had 3 children, precious children, and one of them had died, 14-year-old little boy. And I remember sitting the day after his death, I remember sitting with the family, and we were talking about him, and we were talking about the service. We were planning a service of resurrection in his memory. And as we were talking together that day, in walked his little brother, who was in the 2nd grade at the time. And I'll always remember, I was sitting there talking to the mother and father, and we were talking about what's going on. They were devastated. We were all devastated. The death of a 14-year-old child. And I'll always remember the little brother walked in and kind of heard us talking, and the mother was crying, and the little boy said, "An angel came into my room last night and told me that little Danny is going to be okay." I think we were dumbstruck. We weren't sure what to think. An angel? What do you think? Is it possible? Several years ago, my daughter Shelton had gone on a tubing trip in East Tennessee, and she had gotten in her tube, and she was going around the Little River in East Tennessee near Townsend, and she had gotten about 50 to 100 yards ahead of the group, and she was going down on her tube, and she was recounting the story to me. I wasn't there. She was recounting the story, and she was on the tube, and she went over a waterfall, small waterfall, and her tube toppled. And as she described what happened, she said, Dad, I fell off the tube. And she said, the tube was on top of me, and the water was just pressing both of us down, the tube and me down. And I could not extract myself. I couldn't get up. The water pressure was too great. And she said, I was trying with all my might. And she said, it dawned on me, she thought to herself, I'm going to die here in this river. And she said, the moment she said that, she began to pray. And in that moment, someone lifted her up out of the river and set her on the rock. She said she was crying when all this was happening, and as she was sitting, realized where she was, that she was no longer under the water. She looked around and saw no one. It was about another minute and a half before Jean and some of the others got down there to her where she was on the rock in the middle of the river. She said, Dad, an angel saved my life. An angel. What do you think? And is it possible? As we engage with people out in the world, we have opportunities to engage in spiritual conversations at that intersection between what we know and what we don't know. As we gather here tonight on Christmas Eve, there are a lot of things we know as we look at the biblical account of the story of that first Christmas, God coming to the world in Jesus. But you know, more important than what we know is the mystery that surrounds that event and the impact that event has had on humankind. I'm still bewildered by the mystery of it all.